Welcome to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the meaning and the power of the most important story in business. The one that answers why someone should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. This is the story that defines the very character and nature of an organization. At WordWrite, we call it your capital S story. In each episode of Storylines Live, we feature guests who have great insights on business storytelling, who can share their experiences and key learnings to help you and your organization do a better job of sharing your capital S story to deliver remarkable results. In this episode, we're honored to have Jonathan Carlo with us. He's the CEO of C4 Consulting. And Jonathan, you have quite a great bio. I'm just going to hit some highlights here. C4 Consulting is actually a subsidiary of the C4 Recovery Foundation, which we're going to talk about a little bit as well today. Jonathan's a certified addiction specialist. And before we started rolling, we talked about that's one of the most difficult areas of behavioral health. We'll probably talk about that a little bit today. And he's been doing this work since 1995. Geez, Jonathan, that's like a career in the military. You've been on the front lines, my friend. He's also an international consultant and trainer. And he's had a number of roles in his professional career, including being a president at one time of the Colorado Association of Addiction Professionals. He's on the board of the Stout Street Foundation. Today, home for him is Arkansas, and that's a cool place to be for sure. Jonathan, welcome to Storylines Live.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm honored to be here and glad to join you today.
Thanks. Hey, I know I hit the highlights there on your background. Jonathan, is there anything that you think our audience should know about you that I didn't mention?
I think for me, the biggest part of the story, and it's the capital S in the story, is that I started out not in behavioral health at all. I had no desire to be in a helping profession when I was a younger man, and was really guided into the field and started on the front lines as an overnight behavioral health tech in a very known, very well-known, very famous psychiatric institution in New York, and started on the ground level and really worked my way through the process with a tremendous amount of great mentorship and wonderful opportunities to grow. So I think that's probably the first part of the stroke of the capital S in my story.
That's great. I like the way you did that. Very nice, my friend. That's great. We definitely want to dig into that. We do always ask guests on the Storylines Live podcast, Jonathan. I articulated the four questions that we see most often. There are some others that define the capital S story, why somebody would buy from you, work with you, invest in you, or partner with you. And your journey right now with the C4 Consulting, which of those or which combination is most important to the work you're doing on a daily basis?
I would say probably the buy and partner. And from the standpoint of partnership, we use partnership in our collaborations. So when we're working and serving an organization that comes to us for assistance, we're looking to partner with them in their process, to come in with our experience and knowledge and expertise to supply gap areas or enhance work that they're doing to help them provide the healthiest, most opportune care for the people that they serve in the communities that they serve as well. So it's really partnership and buying from the sense of a service industry. We're primarily a business-to-business service industry.
Right.
In our consulting and behavioral health consulting. Some folks in the behavioral health world see consulting as well, interventions or consulting with families on finding care. And although we have resources that we can certainly point to for that, ours is really, we're the provider's provider. As one of our clients calls us, one of our clients calls us the Behavioral Health Geek Squad, which we'll get into when we talk about the organization and the depth of experience the team has.
Yeah. So just for the audience, I think you made it pretty clear, but just to be painfully obvious, your customers or clients really are healthcare organizations who have operational needs in terms of improving their delivery of behavioral health. Is that correct?
So both existing behavioral health organizations and those interested in getting into the space. We serve new companies or investment companies coming into the space to really look at strategy, financial planning, business operations, licensing and credentialing and certifications and navigating payer negotiations, quality of care, measurement-based care, all these issues, marketing strategy,
Wow.
recruitment, end to end, that everything that a business could need in behavioral health. And our goal is to help organizations be as healthy and as optimal as they can in their service. It's very well understood that the healthier the practitioner, the greater the capacity and impact of their service can be.
Absolutely. And, Jonathan, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, and certainly with regard to your own personal story. So many people who get into behavioral health are focused on the need of the client or the patient, right? I mean, you want to deliver great service, but we're talking about healthcare in the United States. So there is diagnostic codes and billing and utilization rates and all other kinds of stuff that, while providers may not like those things, if they're not done well, they're not able to put as Covey would call it, their area of core competency to its greatest strength and really focus on helping people, right?
It's very true. I think a lot of people misunderstand the real impact. I mean, healthcare globally is, you know, an enormous opportunity, but in the U.S., it's 9% of our GDP roughly.
Oh, geez.
So it's a significant, and when we're talking all healthcare services. When we
Right.
drill down to behavioral healthcare, within the healthcare realm, behavioral healthcare is about 2 to 4% of the total healthcare industry. So it's a much smaller portion of that 9% GDP number that we talked about.
Yep.
So it really does come down to understanding that it's very complex, that there are a lot of macroeconomic systems and political systems involved, and providers can certainly get both lost and frustrated while trying to provide the best care possible, but also to do it in a way that's effective for them as a business,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're providing a service and deserve to be compensated at not just a fair, but an equitable and a progressively equitable range for their services. And the way that the macro and microeconomics of behavioral healthcare work is very complex. And one of
Yes.
our skills, really, and one of the things we focus in on is helping make that complexity simple, obtainable, practical, disciplined, and engaging.
Wow, those are great principles to build your business on for sure. Jonathan, one of the things we always like to share with our audience is how the story of the leader we're interviewing relates to the organization they're leading, and to whatever extent you want to share, your own personal uh, journey, how you wound up doing what you're doing. You gave us a little bit of a preview or a hint by talking about how you started out. But please tell us how your personal story relates to what you do today at C4.
Certainly, I think the mirroring and the parallel opportunity really is impactful. As my journey was, I did not intend to get into behavioral healthcare at all. Earlier in my life, I was actually a musician, playing in rock bands and
Oh,
pursuing a career, in the music industry, at least attempting to the best of my ability and having some limited success in that, and being able to hold lots of different jobs and opportunities, within that, but really learning from those skills and transposing them into behavioral healthcare was something that people with that direct experience. One of my dear friends, was in a program and working in a program and said, "You would be fantastic at this. I
hmm,
know that you don't want to do this." I had zero interest in helping other people in that way. I was doing a lot of volunteering
right.
at the time in my life. A lot of service work, to develop connection and community and gratitude and give back in ways that I could and felt confident about. But I did not see myself as someone who could help other people in that way. And he said, "No, just trust me. You're going to be excellent. You have an amazing set of skills. You know how to navigate complex conversations and difficult conversations with people. You have a very well regulated central nervous system." And he literally used those words. He said, "You have a regulated central nervous system. Not much really startles you. Not much gets you angry. In that way, other people don't push your buttons quickly." And I thought, do you really know me? Because that's not how I experience the world. I think I'm terrible at all these things. But, I gave it a shot. And the truth was that I took to it very, very quickly,
Wow.
and was able to connect with people and be able to be a conduit for
Mhm.
essentially holding up a mirror for their own change, was the skill set that I had learned through life, was to just,
Wow.
hold space for them, to make the opportunity for them to choose differently than they were. And that, was something that I couldn't articulate, that early, working overnights, in a psychiatric facility,
Oh yeah.
for several years, deciding what I was going to pursue in terms of education, and, ultimately pursuing psychology, and then pursuing a degree in philosophy and theology along the way. And that adds to that story of working my way through different roles and learning different opportunities. I became very attracted to and fascinated by, how do I get more time for
Mm.
quality interaction with the people that I serve?
Wow. Bingo.
And that became, the driver for me of really understanding that. And that was, both something that someone pointed me to and said, what you want is more quality time with people. And I said, yes. He said, well, you have to learn all the things that nobody really wants to learn in this business, and get really good at things like paperwork, get really good
Yeah.
at
Billing. Yeah.
all these other things, compliance and
Yeah.
billing, and all
Mhm.
these things that are requirements that give you the ability to have those interactions and to build those relationships with people. That's how you get more time, and that's
Mhm.
how you can learn to influence the process, not control it, but influence it. To say, all
Mhm.
right, if you want to have a seat at the table of how decisions are made, then you have to be really good at all the things that contribute to that. And so I was very fortunate, coming up through, the mental health, and then ultimately into the addiction treatment world, to work with people who had been there in, really the beginning of the advent of shifts in behavioral health care in the U.S., who developed care systems in the late 70s and early 80s, and had those as mentors, the people who invented managed care along with the payer systems as
Wow.
providers. So I learned things like utilization review and billing strategies from those people. I had fantastic mentors that
Mm.
really embedded the foundations of what good care not only can be, but how do you produce it consistently.
Mhm.
There are ways you can do it that are really efficient, and reduce lots of health, and there are ways that are really more toxic and costly to organizations, and you have a choice on how you produce it. I had some wonderful mentors through the years who really took the time to answer those detailed questions, but provide me with challenges to grow, in the space to grow. So for me, it was constantly learning these different areas, and having people who are willing to give me an opportunity to learn, to make mistakes, to grow, to
Mm.
become better, to tap into those things, but ultimately to translate. And the philosophy and theology degree is a very funny part of the story for
Yes.
me. Well, I learned early on, I would get very frustrated with colleagues who were very rooted in one discipline and one approach, and thought that that was the way to treat everyone. And I said, well, that just doesn't work. Ultimately, what we're doing, whether we're treating a mental health condition, whether we're treating an addictive disorder, traumatic, impact to someone's
Mhm.
life, the definition of recovery that we've developed at C4 Consulting is something that came from this experience. Recovery is the restoration of one's humanity from whatever impacted that, to your best performance as the best person that you know how to be. That's recovery. And so, in getting into arguments and staff meetings with clinicians, and this person coming from a social work background, and this person coming from a psychology background, and this person, coming from this specialty training and this type of trauma treatment, and all these arguments, and I was like, look, it's not about who's right. It's about what's right for the person in the moment to help them through
Mm.
this particular need and
Yes.
growth, and then what comes after that, because they're going to outgrow that too. Hopefully,
Yes.
they're going to outgrow us all, right? The goal of therapy is ultimately not to be in therapy.
Exactly right.
And so I refused to, sort of get locked into a discipline, and said, started asking these questions, which some people would call bigger, but I would say smaller, more refined questions, leading me to not go on to graduate school in psychology, and really produce, a passion for philosophy, of looking at, well, what are the influences behind all these things? How do we share this information across the disciplines? How do
Mhm.
we transpose from my musical career,
Right.
transpose notes, transpose pitch, modulate keys, all these same
Wow.
kinds of things, which at the time I didn't realize what I was asking my colleagues, being a young clinician, being a young supervisor, being
Mhm.
young in the field, being a young man, period. But ultimately, that's what I was asking is how can we transpose this to work for the people we serve? Because not everything is, it's definitely not about being right. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The only definition of right that I've seen in recovery is what gets the person better, right? I mean,
Yeah. And hopefully that evolves. Like what someone needs in their earlier portions of stabilizing and building a recovery are different than what they need at some level to grow different aspects of recovery and that definition. So, paralleling the career leading to consulting, when I look back at it and I tell people the story, they're like, oh, this makes no wonder you love this work and you just seem like a natural consultant. You're just very good at doing this. But what I was fortunate was to be able to do was to build relationships with different types of providers. My first
right.
mentor, was very much a psychologist. My next mentor was very much a psychiatrist. I had a supervisor and a mentor for many, many years that had a passion for philosophy, had a background in psychology, but was a marriage and family therapist and very
Hmm.
much about systems and was
Wow.
amazing at
Mhm.
being able to transform systems and teach people how to learn and do in the addiction treatment world in an adolescent treatment facility. Was just an incredible human being who had his own dynamic background, was a musician, all kinds of things, had served in the military, had fallen himself into behavioral health at one point and built a career helping families and through the years having these different mentors that had these disciplines and being able to learn how to communicate with each end of the industry, being able to work with physicians. So much so that I was recruited into a hospital system at one point that was building a treatment center, and they were a few years old at the time, and there were some challenges of this young leadership team,
Mhm.
early in this very unique circumstance with this amazing opportunity to build this really progressive treatment center, but needed someone, as a part of the clinical team who could help build the culture with the leadership, but who understood how to bridge the clinical approach and the medical approach. And that's something I had spent years doing,
Wow.
working with physicians and just learning these different things.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when I get into, much later in life at some point, having a colleague of mine, when I ultimately went into private practice, I started doing some light consulting along the way of just advising on
Mhm.
program development or some compliance issues or different organizational issues. Organizational health has been a passion of mine for many, many, many years. Working in some wonderfully healthy organizations and some incredibly toxic organizations as
I'm
a
sure.
part of those lessons.
Mhm.
But I did some light consulting, and after I had gotten out of that practice, worked for an organization in a regional position, and then my wife and I, I decided, okay, I'd done what I wanted to do with that role. It's time for me to get out of the way and step back. I went back into practice and said I would like to do, maybe like 30%, consulting and like 70% direct service therapy. What ended up happening was the opposite. It evolved where I was doing like 70% consulting and like 30% therapy, and then was, ultimately pointed towards, the team that has become, what's now known as C4 Consulting, and joined that team and went on into that part of my career. But it was really, people saying, "Oh, you should go do this," and there's this group of people, and they have this tremendous passion, and they're part of this, they're a division of this
Right.
foundation. And I was like, "Oh, I know that group
Right.
of, that puts on these conferences and all these, I knew of them."
Right.
But what I got to know them, I found, people who are as driven, in many ways more driven than I was to quality care and really improving
Hmm.
treatment. And that was always a goal of mine, of everybody that I worked with, to really try and make it better. I wanted to always work myself out of a job ultimately,
There you go.
of can we make this better?
Right.
Because if we all do it better
Yes.
and everyone does it with consistent, increasing consistency along the way, eventually you won't need folks like C4 Consulting. They won't,
Hmm.
they won't be necessary except in very limited circumstance. So our goal at C4, much like the goal of therapy, is not to be in therapy. Our goal with our consulting is not to need us,
Wow.
to teach people all the things that they want to learn so that they can be self-sustaining in their growth, and have some methodology to it and have some practice and have some ways to keep thinking about how does one grow. And so the lessons of someone in early recovery would say remain
Mhm.
teachable,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
At the foundation, and my personal story is I started out as a young man entering addiction recovery, in my
Mhm.
late teens. No desire to, like I said, to get involved in helping others, and watched lots of people do it, like get, into their recovery processes and go to school. And I said, I don't want to do that. That's for other people. And then, fall into a career with a passion for really having the best experiences possible and realizing that there's no ceiling on quality. There's no limit to
That's right.
really what can be done, so long as you're willing to be innovative, to be collaborative, to
That is,
start out with safety, trust, empowerment, the principles of trauma informed care, and all these things. That there
yeah.
is a way to do
Yep.
it, and there's a way to do it efficiently that has profitability, where profit isn't a bad word.
Yes.
That profitability is a measure of success and not the
Yeah.
only measure, right?
Right.
That it can be
Exactly.
accessible, that it can be equitable, all of these things,
Hmm.
and say, okay, that it's necessary, but how do we
Hmm.
make it less relevant and catch earlier in the process?
Oh, absolutely. So we're going to take a quick break in a second here, but I have to ask you because you mentioned it more than once, and you and I share something in common. We are both musicians. So, what's your instrument or
I tend to play things with six strings or a relative.
okay?
Uh,
So guitar. Look at this.
yeah,
Got a
yeah,
guitar. It looks like
yeah,
is that
yeah,
a
Fender.
Telecaster?
It is a Telecaster, and
Right.
there's more random nonsense next to me. There's
Yeah.
guitar's been my primary instrument for a long, long time, but if it
There you go.
has strings, I love to play. How about yourself?
I'm a bass player. I play in a band right now, and my first original single with the band dropped about a week before we're making this recording. So yeah, we're working on an album right now. So
Awesome.
yeah, there's a lot of very interesting stuff there. Folks, we're going to dig more into the C4 Foundation, Recovery Foundation, and more specifically, C4 Consulting in this episode of Storylines Live. We'll be right back in just a minute. Hey, everybody, welcome back to this episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the meaning and the power of the most important story in business, the one that answers why someone would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. At WordRight, we call this your capital S story. In this episode, we are honored to have with us Jonathan DiCarlo, the CEO of C4 Consulting, which is a division of the C4 Recovery Foundation. Jonathan, can you give us a little bit of background on the foundation and also how C4 Consulting started?
Certainly. So, C4 Recovery Foundation, in one form or another, has been in existence for almost 40 years. It's really
Wow.
39 years, going on 40 years this year.
Wow.
And it's had a couple of different names through its iterations and growth. But, it was really founded by some organizing individuals who were tasked with trying to understand what was happening in behavioral health,
Hmm.
and asked by some influential people in politics, and to look at things independently. And they started some committee groups and started
Mhm.
examining things and got the most talented people looking at access to care issues and, parity and equity of reimbursement issues and all the things that we talk about today
Right.
almost 40 years ago. So
Wow.
through the years, the foundation has developed, and evolved, with consistent, investment and growth. And the four C's historically have been convening, collaborating, conferencing, and consulting.
Hmm.
So the organization has done that because people will say, "Why C4? Is it explosive impact? Is it,
Yeah.
something like on the nose brand kind of things?" And it's like, well, actually, no. It's these things that we've done organizationally, up to the point where a few years ago, for 25 years, they ran five of the premier conferences in the behavioral
Wow.
health space in the addiction treatment world, and they sold that division off. They said, okay,
Mhm.
it's time to let go of that. So that was a few years ago, actually, right during the tail of the pandemic impacts, that
Yes.
we sold off that division. But the conferencing, division is what many people in the industry know C4 for, but it's been about,
Hmm.
influencing change and access to treatment and quality care,
Hmm.
globally for decades. The consulting story is interesting. One of the young board members, many years ago, had a group that started in roughly 2007, called Peak Consulting Partners, and in 2015, This young board member had actually been approached by the board and said, we'd love to really start to plant a foot in the consulting world more formally. The C4 had done consulting in various capacities through the decades, in different projects and different levels, some policy oriented, some technical assistance, developing innovating programming, and all kinds of really interesting behavioral health organizational impacts. And they said, we want to start to build something that can serve these projects more. We want to build a team. So they bought this small management consultancy group at the time in 2015 called Peak Consulting Partners. It was rebranded as C4 Peak Consulting Partners. The small group of people who were a part of that was recruited to that team, joined that team in 2016 as a senior consultant. At that time, 20 years or so into my career, 21 years almost into my career, some of the stories I shared in our first part of our discussion.
Right.
And in about a year and a half helping the organization grow, I was asked to take over leadership of the group back in late 2017. So this fall will be 7 years.
Wow.
I've been fortunate to be in the management position of Chief Executive Officer, serve the team and grow what we do. The original group started focused on addiction and mental health, and one of the desires of the foundation and the consulting board of directors was, let's diversify what we're into in behavioral health. Let's grow beyond. What can we do? So we started, both recruiting and diversifying the type of impacts and redefining what was behavioral health beyond just management consulting for the addiction treatment world, which was very progressive at the time, 2014, 2015. The industry was in a particular area of growth, and mental health growth was happening as well. Outpatient mental health growth was really starting to take off. Big roll-ups that have become very giant billion-dollar public companies now. Were actually started by some of the principals who founded the consultancy. Some of those strategies were developed by some of those groups of people early on in those trends, and we started diversifying what we were doing. So behavioral health for us was, everything that we were doing in the traditional management consulting, but then it started to diversify. We got into working within foster care systems, and larger hospital systems, and started assisting folks in the applied behavioral analysis space in some ways, and still that concentration on the addiction and mental health part of the world. And some people are like, oh yeah, you guys really help startups. It's like, well, no, we help existing providers as well. And people would come to us with these interesting challenges or these interesting problems they were encountering, and we would go in and assess them and then figure out how to solve whatever it was, or help them develop a solution that was really whether it was innovative or timely, efficient, all kinds of things, to the point where we have a client that would call us just even for ideas. She said, "Oh, I love talking to you guys. You guys are like the behavioral health geek squad. I just call. I have a question. You've suddenly got 1,000 different ideas, and not just different ideas, but they're well thought out. You're like, oh, what about this aspect of this care, or have you read this paper, or do you know about this research that's going on, or what about this practice? Have you guys looked at that? I know you guys used to do that in your business 30 years ago, but have you thought about applying it this way?" Just really applying critical thinking, eliminating assumptions, having a conversation, but really dialoguing with people to say, what is it that you're doing? And not just what is it that you've tried and failed, but what's worked, why, what hasn't worked, and what do we need to do? So we started to grow the team. It was a fistful of us in the beginning. At one point there were 5, 6 consultants, and now we're up, in the mid 20s, almost 30 consultants, coast to coast, and some contacts, with international growth, and we're starting an international office, and continuing to expand some of that growth. We've served some international clients in different ways, and we're growing our technical assistance and policy implementation, policy overhaul, consulting internationally, and certainly serve the foundation with this amazing team of experts. So our real skill at C4 Consulting is having people who have a level of integrity and a level of experience and depth and knowledge, where we have a combined over 550 years of behavioral health experience amongst the team right now. So people with considerable experience, some much longer than others.
Sure.
Some have been in the field longer than some of our team members have been alive. There's a few folks
I
who've been
believe
around
that.
for 40 plus years, and there are those
Right.
of us like myself who are entering, well into my 29th year in the behavioral health industry. And I'm not, you know, I've got a long way to go before retirement. I'll just say that. And more to
Well,
give.
no, that is so great, Jonathan. Such great information. What great stories you're sharing there. I really love that. Um, what gives you enjoyment and satisfaction on a daily basis? Why are you doing this work today in your 20th plus year in the field?
For me, it really is that let's constantly redefine the consistency of integrity. When we
Hmm.
say we're going to do something, how consistent can we make the quality of care grow?
Hmm.
And for me, whether that's something in the direct service, that that person that receives care in a treatment setting, or often more in the last few years, it's been helping business owners and operators really understand how to help their teams grow and how to
Yes.
have the healthiest service, and what's that relationship between mission and margin, and
Wow.
how do you not leverage, but how do you instrumentally and fundamentally create a culture that understands both,
Right.
that is transparent, that is safe, that people
Hmm.
don't feel insecure, and that insecurity isn't driving the decisions. It's not fear.
Hmm.
It's about prosperity, abundance, and really being able to impact people's lives. And we say that our discovery process is one of the things I think that makes us unique,
Yes.
is that we take our time to really qualify ourselves, because we're
Yes.
capable of a wide range of things. We're capable of, there hasn't been a situation where we haven't said, yeah, we can do that. There have been things that we've said, we're not the best fit for that, and here's
Hmm.
why. From an integrity of service standpoint, somebody says, well, can you do this?
Love that.
Yes. Should
Mhm.
we do this? No, we shouldn't. And here's why: because we're not the right fit for you. Yes, we're capable, but we're not the right fit. And let's look at your goals and our alignment, and the attunement process of our values is close, but it's not where it needs to be to really form that true partnership that's going to produce the results that we wanted to for both of us. Because it's not just fee for service for us.
Right.
It's
That's
really
such
about
a
how does this fit? How does this fit organizationally? How does this fit
that
from
is
a
such
mission
a
standpoint?
great point. One of the things we talk about when we work with organizations on their stories is authenticity, right? And a key measure for us of authenticity is what you just said, Jonathan. There it seems like the popular culture definition of any profession, there are a lot of hammer salesmen out there. No matter what your problem is, they have what you need, right? And one of the key measures of integrity, as you said, is the ability to say, I don't think we're the right solution for you, right? And we're not the right partner for you or whatever. That is such validation. I think in the 21st century, in every profession, we are overwhelmed by people who are telling us uh, that they can do everything when that's not really the case. And finding the right fit and the right partner, that's just so critical. Just amazing.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think you're right. I think there's, in the technology space, and lots of other spaces, when people look at business analytics and how do they grow its product to market fit.
Yes.
In behavioral health, the product and the market is people helping people.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And so that is can be simple, but most of the time it's very complex.
Yes.
And people want to automate portions of it, and you can automate certain portions of it. You can use
Right.
technology to enhance certain portions of the process. But ultimately, it's people's central nervous systems being regulated and re-regulated, learning new skills, whatever their recovery goals are, whatever
Exactly.
their desires and their treatment are. It's people helping people,
Hmm.
and that is rarely simple, and it's usually quite and often more rewarding than other types of change process that people get into, because you see the sustainability of someone's life continuing to grow.
Yes.
That was a gift that was given to me. There's an individual in my life who was a school nurse who said took great uh, care to be patient
Hmm.
and waited for an opportunity and asked me a really critical question at a very critical juncture in my life and said, are you, willing to go to a certain length to change?
Hmm.
And what is that? And do you actually want help, or because I don't think you're ready? And there was a
Yeah.
time where she was just patient and asked that question at the right time. The answer was yes, and the door opened, and my life evolved from a series of people much like her who transformed my life completely from the trajectory it was on, which was not going to last much longer, quite frankly,
Yes.
at
Yes.
the pace I was trying to function at. And it's those opportunities are the things that really are the answer to your question in behavioral health. It's that. So product market fit is important and understanding that, but not everybody can do everything, and specialization is not overrated. There
Right.
is something,
Right.
too, and I say
It's
this to
good to
some
know
of our
what you're doing.
clients.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
no, it's that expertise and niche expertise
Yeah.
that people come to someone who have a high degree of skill with a certain specific challenge. That's exactly what I need. My wife and I were talking about this property that we're on in Arkansas. We live in a forest, and we have these trees that are hundreds of years old, and some of them are
Wow.
growing in ways that are requiring someone who not only is willing but has the skill to get very high with a chainsaw.
Oh,
And that is
wow.
not me.
There you go.
That we need a professional tree trimmer to, oh, looks like it might get close to the power line. It's like we should have
Yeah.
someone come in and look at that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not just going to hire some guy with a chainsaw that I see, on the
Right.
side of the road. I'm going to talk to someone who knows,
What
has
they're
the right
doing.
equipment, has the
Yes.
insurances, has the reputation, has the references. Oh, they did a great job, and they were clean, and they were wonderful, and they were
Yes.
of value. And I'm going to ask them integrity questions just like I would expect people to ask me,
Exactly.
because that's who I am as a person. Is I don't just want someone to serve this problem. I want a relationship with people who have resources that I
Yes.
don't,
Right.
that have
So well
expertise that I
said.
don't.
So well said, Jonathan. Jonathan, how can people find you? How can our audience find you online?
That would be on our website. So the letter C, the number four dash consulting.com.
It's awesome.
C4consulting.com.
Jonathan, it's been such a great pleasure to have you on today. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. You shared quite a few knowledge bombs, and I believe our audience is going to benefit greatly from hearing your perspective on things. You have an amazing story. C4 Consulting, an amazing story as well. I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure and an opportunity to share the gratitude and the gifts that people have given me, and just to continue to pass those on. So I really appreciate the
What
opportunity.
an amazing way to end the episode. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And to all of you in our audience, thank you so much for being with us here for this episode of Storylines Live. We'll see you next time on the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business. Be well until then.